thank you everyone for coming today. It's a great honor to be among people like yourselves here who look after, who really stand up for freedom. What I'm going to talk about is just a couple or three stories from inside to give you a feel of what's happening there. I'm not going to talk politics, I'm not going to give you figures, because everyone I think knows how bad the situation is down there. Just a background of our trip there. Myself and a colleague of mine, Dr. Hazim, we felt that there's a need for some medical expertise after we've seen loads of videos, heard a lot of the doctors from inside struggling to treat the wounded because they've been targeted, lack of medical equipment, and lack of facilities down there. No hospitals, no clinics, so it was really a dire situation. We've designed a course to help with the first aid of people who are injured on the ground. First aid for people, to teach people who are non-medical, basically volunteers, to help the injured, to give them a few hours to get to a field hospital, which can be like 4 hours away from the place they've been injured in. We've designed the course, we collected some donations to collect, and first aid bags, which contain the essential equipment to save lives. We managed to collect about 500 bags, and we went there. Our trip started on the borders of Syria, north of Syria, Turkish borders. We met with some doctors, nurses and volunteers there, which we gave them the course, and they went back inside with some bags to teach and to help inside. Then we decided to go in. On the border itself, we've seen loads of, how can I describe it, loads of refugees trying to flee the places and the areas because of the war there. These people were sitting in an open place with no shade, with no food or water. Hundreds of families, including children, old people, men and women. They're waiting to be allowed into Turkey. So that was quite striking and upsetting. For myself, it was quite a moving experience. I've been away from Syria for the last 30 years. This is my first time in, because of the regime and because of certain political ideas against the way the regime run the country. We managed to go in. We met some of the volunteers there, and we managed to give them the courses and give them the bag. And then the decision came to go into Aleppo. Aleppo was the hot spot, and it was bombarded by the regime's army, but from the air and from the ground. And there were a lot of casualties, a lot of civilians, and a lot of doctors who we spoke to, they were telling us, we need medical help, please help us. So it was a risky journey into Aleppo. We got to the place there and we joined one of the field hospitals. I'm going to describe to you the field hospital that we joined there. It's a small mosque, like less than a half of this room, turned into a clinic or a hospital. This field hospital was run by a newly graduated medical doctor. He's just graduated, but there's no one else to run it, with one nurse, and the rest are volunteers, non-medical volunteers, with very basic, simple stuff there. We visit other field hospitals in the area. Another field hospital that we went to, there were 2 doctors and 2 nurses. It was 2 rooms. The first room was used as an accident emergency room with 2 beds only, and the second room was used as a theatre with very poor equipment. I mean, they're very old equipment. 2/3 of these equipment didn't work. And when I asked him, how many people do you receive on a real busy day? He said, up to 100. 100 people between men, women, children. And when I told him, how can you operate? He said, we're 24/7 here. And one striking thing really that really struck me and gave me how bad the situation is there. When I asked him about the pharmacy, the medicine that they use to treat the injured, And he showed me a cupboard. Actually, it was a half a cupboard full of medicines. This will last him for 24 to 78 hours. And when I asked him, when these medicines finish, what are you going to do? He just looked at me and he said, God knows. A moving story. The hospital that we're working in, the field hospital, was in the building. One of our neighbors was a family from Homs who ran away from Baba Ammar, and I think all of us heard about Baba Ammar and about Homs. The family consisted of an elderly father, an elderly mother, and three daughters in their 20s, early 30s. One of the daughters was married and had 2 children. The children was aged about 6 and 7 years old boys. Lovely boys, very sweet. And their father is still in Baba Ammar, and they have no idea how he is or any news from him. This lady went on one evening to buy food for her kids, to buy food and bring it back to feed her children. On the way back, in a taxi, she was shot by a sniper in the head. And how did we realize? We heard screaming and shouting. When we came out from the building, we saw the lady on the ground with a bullet in her head. The brain is out, but she was still alive. So we tried to resuscitate her, stop the bleeding, and we managed to get an old minivan, and took her to a nearby hospital, a bigger hospital that we were working in. And when we got her to the emergency room, I asked the guys, do you have an anaesthetist that can control her breathing? And I said, no, we only have an anesthetic nurse, which did a brilliant job. And when I asked them, she needs a surgery, a neurosurgeon, because she needs to be operated on now. And they just looked at me with a sad face. He said, we don't have a neurosurgeon. It's just 2 surgeons, general surgeon here. They took her up to an intensive care room, which is very poorly equipped. And after half an hour, she passed away. Now we're left with 2 young children, orphans. When we went back, I saw the grief that the Syrian families go through every single day. I saw it in this family. The screams, the way they cried, the way the children felt. It was quite horrible. One last picture and then I'll end. We're working one day in the hospital, and they all, imagine you're working in a place, in a room like this, a lot of wounded coming in. We're being shelled and bombarded, explosion all around you. You hear the jet fighters over you. This is the kind of work that people are working down there. And suddenly a car stops in front of the door of the hospital, and a father in his 50s rushes into the hospital, and he's carrying his 7-year-old daughter. They were moving from their house to another safe area because of the shelling, and a sniper shot her, a 7-year-old child. No discrimination between, they don't discriminate between adults, children, elderly people, fighters, non-fighters, civilians, no discrimination. The daughter, the child, the girl, they put her on the medical table, which was on the, well, I wouldn't say a medical, it's just a wooden table, to examine her, for us to examine her. And she was a lovely girl, a blonde hair. She was looking at me with her gorgeous, beautiful eyes, blue eyes, but she was terrified, not shouting, not screaming, but just in a state of shock. At that time, I have a 7-year-old daughter. My heart sank because sorry. I imagined my daughter there. Lucky enough, the bullet just shot her chest wall and didn't penetrate into her chest or into her lungs. So it was a matter of cleaning the wound, stitching her up, comforting her father, and giving her back to her father to go to a safe place, to go to their faith, because we didn't have any place to keep them. This is just a taste of how things in Syria. This is a daily thing in Syria. And these are the lucky people. We've not seen the unlucky ones. So please, take this home and let's think how we can help and how can we do something for those people there. These days I hear a lot about civil war, and trust me, it's not a civil war. It's a people rising against a regime, a mafia. It's a gang, because they have all different types. They have Alawi, they have Shia with them, they have Sunni with them, all religions with them. And with the opposition, they also have lots of people of the Alawis, of the Shia, opposing the regime. So it's not a civil war, it's a fight for freedom. Thank you for listening.